go.
Lauren, you can't eat on camera. You're making me hungry.
You're not the only one. I haven't had dinner yet.
Hey, Jim.
Hey.
Okay, guys, we'll get started in 3 minutes here. Also, if you didn't get my Facebook late post, we're gonna use like a tennis ball or a lacrosse ball. So grab one of those if you have one.
No food, okay?
Good. I haven't eaten dinner either.
Hey, Meg.
Hey, how are ya?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
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 Excited for Friday?
Yeah. Very, very.
Yes. I can't wait to use an assault bike or a rower. I didn't think I'd ever say that, but
I actually just sat on one of them today for like 10 seconds just to feel the arms again.
there you go. All right. 1 more minute here. All right, guys. So we're gonna get started here. I actually think I know all of you on the video, but just for sake of introduction, I am Meg. I'm a chiropractor here in Waterloo at Price Health. I don't know, I think a bunch of you guys were on the last webinar, but that feels like a lifetime ago. So a couple months ago, I did a webinar on pelvic floor health and how the pelvic floor is incorporated into your core and how much tension you can kind of build throughout that core complex, and how that impacts athletic performance and just movement in general. So Adam and I thought it'd be a good idea to do a little bit of a 360 breathing core bracing workshop. So today that's what we're going to do. I have written it down on my little white or blackboard here, but I don't even think you guys can read that. So I'll kind of go through what we are going to go through today. So we're going to start with a diaphragm rollout. So we're going to get through some of those trigger points in through your diaphragm. So you'll need a ball for that. Tennis ball, lacrosse ball, or even one of those bigger mobility balls will work. Then we'll do some 360 breathing. We'll do some pelvic floor activation and then some TA activation or transverse abdominis activation. And then we'll layer on some movement on top of that. So we'll go through a dead bug and then we'll also do a squat at the end. Okay, so we're gonna start with just rolling out some trigger points in the diaphragm. So a lot of people kind of forget the diaphragm is a muscle as well, and it can also get trigger points. So your diaphragm essentially sits under your rib cage like a dome. So it is attached to the bottom of your rib cage. So what you want to do to roll it out is you're going to be laying on your stomach, but I'll just kind of show you sitting up here so you can see. You're just going to come to the edge of your rib cage and kind of fall off, and you want to be digging your fingers kind of into that spot, and that's where you want to place the ball. So what we're going to do is work from side to side, and you just want to kind of come up with the ball and work your way from side to side. And if you find any trigger points or any tender spots, I want you to stick there, roll around on the ball for a few seconds, take some deep breaths in, and kind of work through that trigger point. So we'll do that for a few minutes, and then we'll get started with our breathing. And if you guys have any questions at any point, you can just feel free to interrupt. I'd rather you ask a question and know you're doing it properly, rather than ask at the end. So again, finding those trigger points just under your ribs. And you can apply a little bit more pressure when you find a tender spot and just kind of roll from side to side. And this is actually surprisingly tender. And then you want to just work your way through the entirety of the diaphragm. So this is a good thing to do before really any athletic activity. Just like you'd roll out your quads or whatever, your hip flexors, your hamstrings before a workout, you can take a look at the trigger points in your diaphragm as well, especially when you're doing a high aerobic workout where you have to be taking in a ton of oxygen. Really important for that diaphragm to have proper movement and excursion. So add it to your kind of list of stretching and mobility you do before your workout for sure. All right. So once you kind of worked through those, I'm going to get you guys to toss your ball to the side. We won't be needing that anymore. We're going to go through some 360 breathing. So you can all lay on your back, and I'm going to do it with you. Can you guys hear me if I'm back here? Yeah, okay, good. Okay, So I'm going to get you guys all on your backs. Your knees are going to be bent, and I want your hands on either side of your belly button. So I'm going to come down and do it with you. So it's super important whenever you're doing diaphragmatic breathing that your spine and pelvis are neutral, are in line. That's how you're going to get the best excursion of your diaphragm and your pelvic floor. So they work better when they're kind of stacked on top of each other. So play around with your hips a little bit. You can come into some anterior pelvic tilt. So dropping those hip bones forward, and then posterior pelvic tilt, kind of scooping that tailbone under, and kind of rock back and forth until you find a neutral position. So that back should be relatively flat along the mat. And again, you want your rib cage not flared, stacked kind of with your pelvis. Hands on both sides of the belly button. And we're gonna just kind of work through a couple different cues for 360 breathing here. So I'm gonna get you guys to just start with some deep belly breaths. So I want you to breathe through that belly and make sure your belly is expanding more than your chest. So as I'm talking, keep making those breaths longer and slower. And I want that exhale to be longer than the inhale. So this is just going to help downregulate that nervous system a little bit, especially if you've had a stressful day or stressful 4 months. So you should be feeling your belly expanding beneath your fingers. And again, you want to make sure you're not breathing from your chest. A lot of us these days breathe from our chest and use the smaller muscles of our neck to do that. And that can contribute to a lot of neck pain. And then you're not getting a full breath in either. So we're going to do this for 30 more seconds. And if you're noticing with this that you're kind of shaking as you're doing it, that's just a cue to you that your nervous system isn't used to this type of breath work or this type of movement. And you'll notice that starts to go away when you train this a little bit more. Okay, now I want you to slide your hands down around your rib cage. So they're gonna be right at the sides of your rib cage here. And I want you to picture sending your breath through the sides of your rib cage. So not just through your belly, but I want you to be expanding through your sides. So it's really important that when we're doing 360 breathing, you're picturing breath going in 360 degrees through your core. So we're going to hold this for another 30 seconds here. So focusing on that expansion through those side ribs. Next, I want you to slide your hands down to just inside your hip bones. So find the kind of pointy part of your hip bones and place your hands just inside there. This is going to help you engage with that pelvic floor a little bit, and you're going to picture sending air or your breath down through into your pelvis. So I not only want your belly to be rising, but I want your the space in between your hip bones to be rising too. And then also remembering that side body. So you're kind of incorporating all three of these into your breath now. And we'll hold that for another 30 seconds here. You want to be breathing through your nose here as well. Okay, now you guys are gonna slide your hands just under your low back. And now I want you to picture sending breath into your back ribs, and the muscles that support your spine. So you should feel that expansion through the back of your body, and you should feel that through your fingertips. So if I were doing this with you guys in person, I would come and make sure. So I want you guys to be really diligent in making sure that you're feeling that through there. Okay, for the next 30 seconds, I want you guys to place your hands back on your belly. And you can even kind of slide your thumbs down around your rib cage if that's easier. And I want you to focus on that 360 breath. So incorporating the belly, the side ribs, the back, and down through the pelvis. And really try to expand all of that in 360 degrees. Awesome. So you guys can kind of rest there. You don't have to be focusing on your breath right now. We're going to start to incorporate the pelvic floor into this now. So you can stay on your backs. We're going to keep breathing here on our backs, but we're going to do a little bit of an engagement with our pelvic floor. So your diaphragm and your pelvic floor essentially work together. So when you take a deep breath in, your diaphragm comes down, and so does your pelvic floor, and your pelvic floor will relax when that happens. When you exhale, your diaphragm will come up, and the pelvic floor will contract and come up as well. So if either of those muscles, your pelvic floor muscles or your diaphragm, don't have enough movement, then the other one will be affected too. So they work like this together. So we're going to lay on our backs. And now we are just going to be incorporating a Kegel in with our exhale. So again, you can just place your hands around your belly button, and I want you to keep doing those 360 breaths. But this time, when you inhale, I want you to picture your pelvic floor relaxing and moving down. And when you exhale, I want you to do a little bit of a contraction or a Kegel. So if you need a cue for a Kegel, I know a lot of guys haven't done them before, picture using the pelvic floor to squeeze and stop a stream of urine, mid-urine. That's like a cue you can use to squeeze and engage those muscles. So again, inhale, pelvic floor relaxes. Exhale, the pelvic floor will come up, the diaphragm will come up, and the pelvic floor contracts. So when you're doing that Kegel contraction on the exhale, I want to make sure you're not squeezing your glutes together. A lot of the times we accidentally use our big muscles, like our adductor muscles or our glutes or even our core. and we think that's engaging the pelvic floor, but we're not truly engaging the pelvic floor. We're using our bigger muscles instead. So we're gonna do that for 30 seconds. So make sure that this Kegel contraction is really slow and controlled. Try not to just squeeze it all at once. Just like your breath, it should be a couple seconds of a slow progressive contraction. All right, you guys can stay on your back here. So now I want, you can relax for a couple seconds. We're gonna add in the transverse abdominis activation into this. So your transverse abdominis is your deeper core layer. So your rectus abdominis sits on top and it goes vertically. And that's the muscle that's like your six-pack abs. Underneath is your transverse abdominis, which runs horizontally and provides stability to the spine and the pelvis. Super, super important in activities of daily life, just keeping your pelvis and your spine safe and engaged. And then, of course, during athletic performance, very, very important. The higher the load, the higher the speed, the more you want your transverse abdominis engaged and contracted. So again, we're going to be on our backs and we're going to be working through an exhale and then a contract. So it's going to look like this. We're going to start doing our belly breaths. So first make sure your spine's in neutral. So tuck under, make sure pelvis, rib cage are aligned. You're not flaring your ribs at all. Hands on either side of the belly button again, and you want your fingers pointing in like this. And let's just do a couple belly breaths here. You guys should be pro at them now. Make sure to get that Kegel activation as well. Okay, so now you can keep breathing. I want you to think blow before you go I was taught that little phrase one time. So essentially you want to exhale and then contract. So you're going to take a big inhale, exhale, and then you're going to cinch in and tighten and contract those abs. For this muscle, you want to think of it like a corset around your waist. So you want to think of it drawing in rather than crunching up. So you shouldn't see any movement of your shoulders, your chest, your neck. You really just want to think of that muscle kind of cinching everything in, cinching that belly button and that waist in. So you should actually feel that movement of your hands. And at the end of that contraction, you should feel tight and braced in your core. So we're going to work through 2 sets of 10 of that. So I'll give you guys a couple of minutes to work through those contractions. And feel free to ask any questions if you have any. Okay, this last set here, I want you guys to focus on not losing that brace. So before we were doing the inhale, exhale, brace. Now I want you to inhale, exhale, brace, but then I want you to maintain that brace while you're breathing. So this is the hard part of doing this, is maintaining that brace, especially when you add in movement like a deadlift or a squat. Maintaining that brace through the entire movement is what's going to really help you generate power, generate tension in the system, as well as stay safe and avoid any injury. So make sure you're kind of giving yourself a little bit of feedback with your fingers on your tummy here. That'll help you to just maintain that brace. Awesome. Anyone have any questions about that at all? Okay. Okay. So if there's no questions, we're going to move on. We're going to layer some movement on top of this now. So like I said, the stuff we've been doing now is all kind of static stuff. So the more movement, speed, weight, load you add to this kind of stuff, it gets harder and harder to maintain that brace and maintain your breath. So you want to start with the foundational stuff and then kind of move on from there. So we're going to start with a dead bug. So you guys, again, can lay on your backs. You're going to have your hips and knees at 90, shoulders at 90 degrees as well. I know we've all done dead bugs at LP, so you guys should all be familiar. Make sure your spine's in neutral. Make sure your ribs aren't flaring out. I know this one's a little bit harder to keep those ribs down. And again, we're going to do a couple belly breaths. And then I want you to inhale, exhale, brace. Continue to breathe. So inhale, exhale, move. And you're moving opposite leg to opposite arm. So I want you guys to start with a really, really small range of motion. So really slow, very controlled. And you'll kind of know the point at which you'll break your brace and you'll no longer have that optimal tension in your core. So if that means that you can only move this far, that's kind of how far you're going to go until you can develop enough tension to get you down to like this level. There's no point in opening your brace and kind of just relying on your passive ligaments and tendons, because that's where injury happens. So we want to make sure we're moving really slowly and controlled, bracing that core, maintaining your breath as well, and coming back. So we're going to work through 2 sets of 10 of those. And if you need to, you can kind of give your tummy some stimulation to check in, make sure you're bracing properly, and then begin with some movement.
Meg, quick question.
Yeah.
During this one, I know we were breathing throughout. I'm trying to kind of just watch like your 360 breathing, but are we breathing kind of every rep in the dead bug, or are we?
Yeah. So breathe in, out. So on the exhale, you want to be moving.
Right.
Yeah. Blow before you go.
Right. So we breathe in. That's where we fill everything up. We breathe out. That's where we brace.
Yep.
And then we move.
Yeah.
Cool.
And just try not to lose that brace in the middle of those breaths.
Right. Okay. Good. Thank you.
Okay. So once you guys have finished those up, we're gonna move into a squat. So I'll wait for Glorian's gonna be my barometer here on whether you guys are done or not. You done? Okay. All right, so we're going to start to layer another element of movement on top of this. So we're gonna be standing and we're gonna just be going through a body weight squat. But again, this gets harder the more elements you kind of add to it. So let's get up. I'm gonna, oops, let's move this. So I'm gonna be just facing the side because it's probably easier for you guys to see. But we wanna kind of go through our, bracing sequence, but standing this time. So again, you wanna make sure your rib cage is in line with your pelvis, so you're not dumping forward like this and you're not kind of sinking back. Usually when we're weightlifting, you see a lot more people dumping forward with their butt out. So you want to be neutral, rib cage over pelvis. So essentially when you're starting a movement, you want to have your ear in line with your shoulder, in line with your hip, knee, and then ankle. I don't even think you guys can see my ankle, but I'm going to try to move back. So once you're in that neutral position, your diaphragm, your pelvic floor, and your core can all work better together, and they can actually brace better together. So if you're going to do a squat, you want to think about screwing those feet into the floor to provide a little bit of tension and torque through the system, through your legs and your hips. You want to turn your glutes on, maintain that neutral spine. You're going to take a deep breath in, fill up 360, contract and brace, and then you can go down into a squat. And the key here is not losing your brace as you come down. So a lot of times people will lose it around here and just kind of fall into a squat, and that's where you see a lot of things kind of fall apart, especially if you have weight on your back or your front. So really try to maintain that brace through the whole time. And if you have to put your fingers again on your tummy, that's a good way to just get feedback into the system. So screw those feet out, activate the glutes, make sure rib cage is over pelvis, and then we'll do a set of 10 squats here. And you can reset at the top every time. So making sure that you're in line, you're taking that deep belly breath in, and then you're bracing that core and coming down.
Meg, while you're going, can I just ask something again? Sorry.
Ask
I've learned, or not learned, tried to teach myself different ways with the breathing.
Yeah.
So usually what I do, sorry to interrupt everyone else doing their squats, but usually what I do is I take my breath in, fill 360, fill everything.
Mm-hmm.
And with my breath in, then I start my squat down.
Right.
The old concept, the theory I was self-taught was fill, if you have a belt on, or if you don't, fill the belly, brace, and then go. So yeah. I feel like I'm missing one step, that breathe before you go.
Yeah. And it's different if you're it's not different, but if you're lifting a ton of weight on your back and you're using a belt and you're kind of using that fill everything and that Valsalva maneuver kind of technique, that's definitely a weightlifting technique. But ideally you'd be doing it the other way. But again, when you have a ton of weight on your back, and that's how you're going to get through, especially from a performance standpoint, you're just trying to make that lift.
Okay.
And that's just.
But for 10 reps,
yeah,
that's not really sustainable, right? Because it's you're almost holding your breath.
Exactly. And that's kind of the stuff that can lead to injury. And you're just jacking up that intra-abdominal pressure. So that's when you get stuff like sports hernias or stuff like that.
Okay. So on a 10 rep because when we get back into the gym next week, we do let's say we do 5 reps.
Yep.
We're gonna breathe in at the top, and then before we start our squat, we're gonna engage and breathe out.
Yeah, and while you're coming down and you're keeping that engagement, that contraction, you can be breathing out.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. So slowly just letting your breath out as you're engaging everything.
Yeah.
But you're not, then you come up with that tension and then you reset at the top.
Breath, yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, I'll practice now.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so if we're warming up for squats next week,
Mm-hmm.
is it better to practice? Is it better to practice some dead bugs in our movement prep, or practice some like air squats?
Yeah, I would do both. Yeah, I'd do both, to be honest.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool.
Get that core.
Some good breathing with the dead bugs, some good breathing with the air squats. Cool.
Yeah. So that's kind of all I have for today. But again, like I said, the more load and speed, if you're adding rotation to these movements, the harder it is to maintain that brace. And you want to practice that brace in all of those movements. So it's not just keeping your spine straight up, and like you can be in a flex position. You just have to know how to brace in a flex position,
Right.
if that makes sense. So this is kind of the basics of breathing and bracing, but you can translate it to any movement, and you should translate it to all movements. So if you guys have any questions, you can ask, but that's kind of all for tonight.
Can I keep asking?
Yeah.
If anyone else has questions, go first. Okay, deadlift. So we're starting from the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
right? So we got a brace at the bottom. Breathe in,
Fill up.
fill up, breathe out, blow before we go, and then lift. Should we keep that breath until we lower back down?
Yeah, I would, because then you can keep your brace.
Yes, keep the brace on the way down.
Unless you're coming up to the top and you're like taking a breath and resetting at the top and then lowering down.
Right.
You
It's
can
a
totally
reset.
do. Yeah, and you can kind of do it like the reverse. So breathe in, brace, lower. if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
like a touch and go deadlift versus a.
Yeah, and that's like you could basically do one round of the breathing, or you could do 2.
Cool. Right. You can do it at the top and bottom if it's super heavy, or yeah.
Yeah, depending on how fast you have to go, and yeah.
Right. Any other lifts, guys, that you guys are thinking about? Like a clean, like a calm
Power.
movement.
Sorry?
A power clean. Just like so.
Same. Yeah. So same thing, like when you're down in that position, you want to take a breath in, fill up, brace, and then you're moving.
Okay, and then release tension here once we're up.
Yeah. Like once you're stood up.
Yeah.
But when you're catching, you don't want to be releasing tension.
Right.
Thank you.
Because that's where your spine is going to take the most impact, right? When you come up
Yeah.
like that.
Okay.
Right, where people kind of lose that upper back tension. It probably starts in the diaphragm.
Yeah. Everything. We're relating everything back to the diaphragm.
There we go. Cool. What about overhead? So you got your bar in the front rack and you're going into like a push press or a push jerk or a split jerk.
Yeah.
A little harder to maybe maintain that in that overhead position, but same kind of concept, right?
Yeah, and like this is where kind of different training with the breathing will come in. So you can do like with a PVC pipe, like breathing overhead, or even like on the ground, just do some breaths like
Right, cool.
this. So you're kind of training in that position because that is such a tough position, especially to maintain like any sort of neutral is tough. So then breathing becomes harder. So like training those overhead movements before doing like a loaded overhead movement.
Right, like on a split jerk, oftentimes you feel like you got it and then you land that split jerk, and if you're not braced, then you kind of lose stability in the finishing position.
Yeah.
Cool. So practicing on the floor overhead, just feeling the tension all the way through.
Yeah, and just like cueing people, like when people warm up with a barbell, like just cueing people to stay braced that whole time, and to take that breath in, breath out, go.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Love it. Okay, I'll let you go if no one else has questions.
You can also like email me, message me, whatever, if anyone has questions they want to ask later.
Yeah, for sure. Excited to do one at the gym where we can do, a little workshop and kind of see it a little more firsthand, which would be awesome.
Yeah. And like, keep in mind what you said about the belt is totally valid. Like when you're doing a belt or you're doing that Valsalva maneuver, when you're lifting a ton of weight, like that's important. That's why people do it. Right. But for kind of more longevity and sustainability,
Yeah. Like if you're lunging down the turf, you
need to be
your breath. Right.
And so many people hold their breath, right? And then you'll be like, at the end, you're gasping for no reason.
Right.
So
1 rep max versus, multiple reps.
Yeah.
Cool. Thanks, Meg.
No problem.
Thanks, Coach Meg.
No problem. Can't wait to see you guys at the gym. I'm so
Yeah,
excited.
I know. Soon.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's right here. You guys want to see? Never mind.
Coach Glow, take us on a tour, buddy.
Oh, you want a tour? 1 second.
I'm just kidding.
Where are we going here? Oh, baby, we got some equipment back.
Hold them to set up.
Ba-bang.
On the
And the lights are on. What
yeah,
you got?
baby. Look at those bikes and rowers.
Nice. Looking good.
Oh.
And that's it for today, ladies and gentlemen. See ya.
Okay, bye guys.
Thanks, Meg.
No problem.
Thanks, Meg.
Upload to cloud, okay, Meg?
Okay. Yeah, I will.
Thank you.